Uh, so, angular momentum, I was saying, is the direct equivalent of linear momentum. Okay, to recall what we know about linear momentum first is that linear momentum P is the product of the mass and the velocity of an object, okay, where momentum and velocity both are vectors. Um, Now, what else do we know about linear momentum? If you remember from our class regarding collisions of objects, so there are two objects m1, m2. M1 is stationary, v is equal to v1 is 0, v2 is equal to some x meters per second. So therefore this has a velocity and this is moving towards it. And the you know when a collision occurs, depending upon whether it's an elastic collision or an inelastic collision, we can determine what happens after this. Okay, and why are we able to do that? We are able to do that because we know that the momentum of an object, and therefore the momentum of a system, cannot be changed unless there is an external unbalanced force acting on the system. Okay, so if we remove the frictional forces and ignore the air drag as a result of these collisions, we will definitely be able to say that however it happens, let us take the case of an inelastic collision. That means these two objects stick together, and then after collision they kind of are together and they head off with some velocity, okay, m1 m2, in this direction. So there is a v prime. I'm just reminding you a little bit about these things. So then what we can say for sure is, if there are no external forces involved, the momentum of the system prior to collision and the momentum of the system after the collision, that is P and P prime, I put it, I hope you remember these notations. So we can say that these two momentum are going to be exactly the same. So what is the momentum before the collision? That is m1 v1 plus m2 v2, right? V1 happens to be 0, so therefore this will go off, but it need not be 0. You see, V1 can also have some value. This should be equal to m1 plus m2, right, times v prime. Okay, and this gives us a way, like if you remember the collision incident, there were two cars collided into one another and there was an accident, and the investigators are trying to find out which car was probably moving faster, and therefore try to determine whose mistake it was, because either if one of the cars has not been maintained well and the brakes don't work, or the brakes did not work because the driver did not press the brakes in time, maybe because the driver was intoxicated, we do not know, or if the person was driving above the speed limit, then it becomes important to know what was their velocities just prior to the crash. Okay, so I'm just kind of like doing a quick recap of what linear momentum principles were and where the role of conservation of angular momentum comes in. Okay, so this is the most important concept. Conservation of angular momentum. So is there an equivalent of this in the case of rotational motion, right? Turns out that yes, it can be so. Okay, so therefore we can see that these are the ways in which we describe or understand how conservation of momentum can help us understand what happens in situations with regard to linear momentum. Now come to angular momentum. Okay, so in angular momentum, perhaps it's a good idea to start with the example itself and then move from there to understanding the mathematics a little bit. Okay, so what do we see? So we'll start with what we are able to see. I'm changing the example from yesterday. Yesterday I was talking about the carousel in the jungle gym, but maybe I can start with a fairly simpler example. We take a turntable, maybe something like the what is it, your potter's wheel, you know. So there is something like this in the pottery shed, right, where you can put a lump of clay on top and then you rotate this and you work on the clay. Shantanu knows this very well, I suppose. Okay, and what you can do is you can make somebody stand on this. So this is the person's head, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this person, uh, hold a couple of heavy weights, kind of like barbells in their hand. So you have a couple of barbells in the hand. You get the picture? Yeah, I guess he's not see-through, so you can't see the rest of it. And he's wearing bell-bottom pants. Let me change that a little bit, because nobody wears bell-bottom pants nowadays. Okay. Now, what needs to be done, just like in yesterday's example, is this person needs to be given a bit of a external torque just to begin with, so that their angular velocity increases. Okay, angular velocity, just to introduce a new term, is signified by the letter omega. Okay, so this is the Greek letter omega, capital omega. Or is it the small omega? No, this is the small omega. Capital omega is this. Okay, so this is the small omega. So that is angular velocity. So you give this person a little bit of angular velocity about this axis of rotation. Let me try to draw an accurate line. About that axis. Okay, so then the person starts spinning around with some angular velocity omega. Okay, now I tell the person, whenever you are comfortably balanced, what I want you to do is I want you to extend your arms outward, okay, like that. Of course, with the weights in your hand. So you don't get to drop the dumbbell. You have to hold it out with the dumbbell out like that. All right. So what will now happen? Sorry, it just gave me a message that my internet connection is unstable. Typically, when that happens, the quality of sound and the video, everything goes down. So if it becomes too bad, just let me know. When I'm giving instructions, I typically tend to close the chat. So if you have sent some message on chat at this point of time, just give me a, let me know by voice also. Okay, so that happens. So you extend the arm. Now, what's going to happen when you extend the arm is that we will notice actually that the angular velocity, that is the rate at which you are spinning, visibly and considerably slows down. Okay, so omega goes down, right, when you extend your arms. And then if you put your arms back in mysteriously, omega goes up again. All right, the rate at which you are spinning. Let's say that you are doing one or two 360-degree turns per second to begin with, right? And if you extend your arms, it might go down to one 360-degree spin per second. I watched a video of Professor Walter Lewin in which he says that if each one of these weights are about 2 kilograms, okay, then for this situation, your spin rate can go down almost by a factor of 3. Okay, so I'm just taking a factor of 2 uh, since it's kind of more convenient to talk about. All right. So and and what's more, what's surprising is you might say, okay, I can understand that it slows down, but if you put the barbells back, if you kind of bring it back into this position again, right, the angular velocity increases again. Okay, and that should automatically tell us that some conservation of something is going on somewhere. Remember that in any system, if by changing some parameters you're able to go back and forth on some other parameter, right, that means that there is some conservation business going on over there, right, because you're tweaking one and you're finding the other change, and when you put the first factor back where it was, the other factor also goes back where it was. Okay, so that means that there is some conservation business going over here, and indeed it turns out the matter that is the thing that is being conserved is your angular momentum. Okay, so let's try to understand this from what we know already. So we have seen one factor over here, that is your angular velocity. The other factor in this, I'm just checking the chat, looks like somebody has sent something. That's correct. It is done in ice skating and ballet dancing too. When people spin about, ice skating, I didn't catch it. I just remembered it now. Advay sent the message. Guys, when you're sending a message, send it to everybody so everybody can have a look. Maybe you are pointing in the wrong direction. It's all right. It doesn't really matter. It's just us. It's our class. So that's right. So what happens is that the other factor that we need to take to consideration is the rotational inertia. Okay, because what we know, obviously, rotational inertia is that when we change mass distribution about the axis through which we are rotating, we are playing around with the rotational inertia of the object. Rotational inertia is usually given the symbol capital I, which also happens to be the symbol for current, but then that's in current electricity. But rotational inertia is typically given the symbol I. So what we can see now is that when you increase or decrease the rotational inertia, right, for a system which is isolated, which means that there is no external force acting on this system, right, then we find that the angular velocity also changes proportionately. And what we also can see now, because we know inverse proportionalities, when angular velocity increases, so first we increased it, right? We went from this position to this position. When angular velocity increases, then, I beg your pardon, rotational inertia increases, then angular velocity decreases. And vice versa. When you reduce the angular inertia by bringing the dumbbells closer to the axis of rotation, and then the angular velocity increases. And what does this look like? It looks exactly like the relationship in linear momentum between mass and velocity, right? Not in the case of collisions, but if you remember this particular scenario, right? I think there was a question which we had also chosen to answer. If there was a railroad wagon, right? And this railroad wagon was passing by, and there is a giant hopper that kind of is dropping some mass onto it. right? What could it be? Let's say coal. So dropping coal into this, right? So as the railroad car is passing, it's moving. Okay, it has certain velocity v. If you increase the mass of this object, and there are no other external factors, that forces that we are taking into consideration, then since the mass of this railroad car is increasing, when there is no external forces involved, the velocity of this railroad car has to decrease. The same thing occurs also in the case of rockets, if you remember. Rockets which are flying into outer space. Um, okay, right? These rockets are burning fuel as they are moving outward. So since they are burning the fuel, Deeta, did you get logged out and came back in, or were you just joining late? Um, in that case also, since it's an isolated system that is moving towards space, and although we cannot ignore air drag, if we not consider air drag within the Earth's atmosphere, then as the mass decreases because the fuel is being converted into gas and ejected, then the momentum of the system will be conserved. The mass goes down, but the velocity goes up. Okay, so the exact same situation seems to be occurring over here also. The change in the rotational inertia seems to be causing a change in the angular velocity. And since they seem to be of proportional nature, inverse proportional nature, we can say therefore that angular momentum is being conserved. Okay, so that is the reason why when you change the inertial distribution, right, you also see that the angular velocity changes. So this, in a kind of nutshell, is what angular momentum and conservation of angular momentum is about. So if there are any questions that pops to your mind about this, you can ask now, either in the chat or directly.